This is the Thursday phone-in. I'm Matty. As always, we're on the back of a friendly win over Rott Weiss Essen at Easter Road last night, 3-2, with goals from McGrath, Hoylett and Boyle, and a late penalty save for Salinger as well, so securing the win in front of a 30,000 strong crowd at Easter Road, which was good because there was a bit of panic that the crowd might not be up to much and that we would be outnumbered by the Germans. But despite their best efforts, I think the Hibs fans gave a good account of themselves last night. Also, I'm not sure what else is happening. There's been a sort of leak of the third kit. I don't know if everybody's seen that. It looks a sort of like black and green number. And we've not signed anybody else in the last week that I can remember. So, but I don't think we've lost anybody either. So we're as we were. We've got Doug on for a Long Bangers debut. Doug, thanks for joining us. I suppose we could kick off with the Hibs panel. You're on the supporters panel. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I think the club put out an email to a lot of supporters probably around about springtime, and they were looking for, I think it was 8 ordinary fans to join a panel. Supporters panel. They already had 8 representative groups, like Block 7, Hibernian Supporters Limited, the women's team supporters, and so on. So they've got already had a range of people that they were already speaking to. But I think it's really just to try and cement the relationship between the board and the fans as best they can. It's I think sometimes a wee bit of a thankless task, but I think the issue is that we're really trying to act as a link between the fans and the board, and it's not really to look at the finances of the club or anything like that. I think it's more to do with how do we improve the match day experience for everybody. Just looking at the general direction of the club, something I know that Ian's very keen on is bringing young players through the academy system, and that kind of thing, and just preparing fans as well for things. I mean, you mentioned that the other strips that have been launched, and maybe a few more in terms of the 150-year anniversary for the club as well. So it's that kind of thing. I think we're just all trying to be like a critical friend for the club and say this is working, this is not really working, and making sure that there's a good communication between the club and the fans, which I think we'd all, at various times over the last few years, I think we've all said that would be something that we'd like to see a lot more of, just that better connectivity between the fans and the boardroom. So that's roughly the direction that it's headed in at the moment. It's early days. We've only had one meeting. There'll be another 2 meetings this season. Probably one in October and one after Christmas, but really it's really to cement the relationship between the fans and the board to make sure that there's no gaps in between, or there's no misunderstandings that are not really helping the future of the club.
I quite like the description of a critical friend. I think that's a good way to look at it, because it is supposed to be, I think, a collaboration, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's certainly the way I'm looking at it. I think it's I'm not there to criticise anybody doing their job. As any other football club, any other organisation, from time to time mistakes will be made. But I think we're just trying to go forward as a total entity, and not have. It's not about splitting the supporters and the board. It's making sure that we're all facing the same direction and taking the club forward.
And that has support, I think, from the very top of the club, isn't it? I mean, this is driven by Ian
the
Gordon.
people who were at the first meeting. We had Ian Gordon and Stephen. I think it's Stephen Hazlitt, is it? He's a head of operations for the club. So the things we were discussing at that first meeting, and to be honest, people were just finding their feet a wee bit at that one as well. They didn't really know what to expect, but I was quite taken by the fact that the Ian Gordon in particular, pretty straightforward and honest in his any responses. We talked about things like the impact of the quite stringent UEFA rules on everything from floodlights to what the club had to put in place for like visiting media, obviously visiting supporters, and Stephen Hazlitt did a lot of that discussion. Also about ticketing for future European games. We also talked about the training centre and the investment that's being made there. There was mention as well about a satellite centre for young academy players, probably more in the west of Scotland rather than around Edinburgh, because I felt there was a group of players there that maybe needed supported, more locally, so they weren't travelling to the training centre or through to Edinburgh all the time. And things like supporting parents who had academy players. A lot of the parents who have got young players who train with Hibs, if they go to the training centre, maybe a winter's night or something like that, they're sitting in their car for an hour and a half until their offsprings finish their training sessions. So they're trying to get more like maybe not a cafe, but certainly a centre where people can go and sit and maybe have a coffee or something while the young players are doing their training. And we obviously talked about the 150-year celebrations and things that would be coming up on that. So that was the kind of flavour in the meeting. I think these are the three main things I can think of about how things could be taken forward.
Brilliant. I think it's a really good idea. Guys that are dialed in and anybody that's watching on YouTube, before we can go on and start talking about the game last night, do you have any questions that you'd like to pose to Doug about the panel? John, you got your hand up there.
Look, can I just start? Is this a communication vehicle, or is this a forum that's going to actually address concerns of the fans?
No, I think I'll address the concerns to the fans. I think
So picking up on that, what did anything go away from that first meeting with somebody with a go and do, or did you have no criticism of you for turning up?
No.
I mean, but this has been in play since January. The club have put it forward. The chairman and senior staff have been there. Did anybody walk away with do this before the next meeting and come back to us?
No, but I think we'll get to that point where that will happen.
You've only got another two meetings this season. And I have probably, like others, I've spent years in organisations where you have a lovely meeting to start with, everybody has a chat, everybody gets a pat on the back, you talk about all the nice goody stuff. I really hope it doesn't just turn into, I mean, I've worked with Stevie in his previous job. Now, I mean, lovely guy, but he will talk the room down if he wants it to go in a certain way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's one of those things where lots of time for it, but there's going to have to be a balance there.
Yeah. No, I think we're going in with our eyes open. I think what I spoke to quite a few people afterwards as well, and I think that's the way we want to take things forward. And to be honest, Ian Gordon, I think in particular, was particularly open to having that discussion. But there are obviously things that they can't discuss in that kind of forum. But I think what you're saying about...
I accept it's not a forum to run the club, because the Gordons own the club and they control it. I mean, they have done everything the past couple of years to have full control.
Yeah.
But if they're going to project this to the fans, I mean, there is just a bit of me just worried. I mean, it becomes nice and it's the what do you call it? The groups you set up at work to make sure you've got enough teaspoons in the drawer. No, I mean, you didn't want one of them.
No, but I think to be again just
nothing against you.
I'm just saying
have been put forward.
Yeah,
and it feels as if I'm being a bit rough on you, if I'm honest. I'm not meaning to be.
Right, I've had worse. I can tell you. But I think there's a genuine effort to try and improve the communication between the fans and the board. And I think if we go ahead with that at the back of our minds, then there'll be tough questions we want to ask But I think for the first meeting, I think people were just sussing each other out and making, just seeing how this was going to work. I thought it was Kieran Power who more or less chaired it. It was a fairly relaxed meeting in that sense. It wasn't like round the board table or anything like that. It was more just sitting in one of the bars, and I think everybody had a fair shout at making their points. And I think your point's absolutely valid. And but the proof of the pudding will be in the eating.
And Doug, I'm making this point in front of at least 3 people who are vastly more experienced than me in terms of management.
Yeah, right. Anyway, we'll just need to stuck it and see how it goes. And if it's obviously if it's not the right kind of thing, then I'm sure there'll be something an improvement made. But I think everybody's going in with this the intention of making the club a better experience for everybody. And I think as long as we stick to that, then we'll get some sort of feedback from that you'll hopefully see some changes over the short term.
Thank you.
Joe, you had your hand up first, and I'll come to you next. So, Joe, on you go.
Well, first of all, thank you for getting involved. A volunteer's worth 1,000 press gang men, as the saying goes. This isn't new, though. Hibs have got the fans involved in the past. About 10 or 12 years ago, a legendary Highbie called Frank Dugan, who sadly passed away last year, was heavily involved in this. Frank was in my class at school for 10 years at Scottish Academy an eon ago. But that kind of fizzled out. But I think it was different board changed everything. So I'm really glad to hear that Hibs are reviving this involvement of the fans. I think it's quite exciting, really. And it'll take time to get off the ground, but good luck and thank you for getting and volunteering and getting involved.
Yeah. But I think the other thing to note is that it's I think people have given the commitment for a couple of seasons, and then there'll be a refresh, and there'll be people with different ideas and different ways to want to do things that might come in with different priorities or whatever. But I say my own view is I think it's a good thing. I agree with you there. And I think it's more how do we actually make this work for the benefit of all the supporters and the 13,000 that turned up last night, for example. Was that the best? Okay, we don't have any control over what happens on the park, but if we can make the Eastern Road a more attractive venue, for example, then I think these are the kind of things that might encourage a few more fans to come out.
Yeah, your feedback is so important. Feedback's the breakfast of champions. It's so important. So well done for getting involved in this. And thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Ian, you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wondered if being questioned by John Dougie was actually more difficult than your 10 years in House of Commons. No, seriously, just so as people, obviously you're quite a new supporter. You just want to give them a brief bit of background about yourself.
Yeah, well, you've just done that, but it's the House of Commons was something completely different, and where nobody listened to what you were saying anyway. But that was the sense I got from the place. But not to be too political about it, I genuinely thought that the people who were there, Ian and Stephen and Kieran, were all from the management side, as it were all happy to listen and express their point of view quite forcibly. But at the same time, there was a lot of good information that came out, and I think sometimes you just got to explain things a bit better to like supporters and that kind of thing. If we can get wins like that off the park, then hopefully that'll feed through to making the club a better place all round.
But Matty, I just wanted to point out that when I was standing at the game last night, I was saying, I wonder if we're going to have any of the players who were in the last game in 1955, if they were going to come out. And I just checked, and Dougie was actually alive when the last Rott Weiss Essen game happened. But I take it you weren't at the match then. So Joe always talks to us about when his first game. So when was your first game, Dougie? When was your first game?
First game against Berwick Rangers. Hibs won 1-0. the previous match they had put the Glasgow Rangers out the cup, which was a bit a thing at the time. I think it was a huge clear out at Ibrox following that game. They got rid of a lot of players after that debacle. But we got them in the next round and beat them 1-0 Easter Road. And yeah, I think it was maybe Alex Scott or Jim Scott. Always get these two mixed up. My memory's doesn't go back that far these days. But yeah, it's aye. But I always tell people, I remember when we talk about facilities at the ground, I spent my dad took me to the enclosure, which was just underneath the main stand at that time. And I remember standing on 2 empty cans of McEwan's Export, and that was the only way I can see the game. So when we talk about people going to all the padded seats and all the rest of it these days, it's quite a change.
The worst time would have been waiting for somebody to finish the cans first.
Yes.
No able to see it down there.
Yeah, or sometimes if we couldn't get to the toilet quick enough, the cans were used for another purpose. But yes,
You mentioned a clear out at Rangers and players losing their jobs. Normally it's like a clear out Ibrox. It's referees that are sweating for their jobs. Ian, you would have been at the game last night. What were your thoughts?
It was a really enjoyable evening. I mean, it was great, Matty, because it was a friendly that ended in a fight, which was very good. It was a very good crowd. There was quite a few Rott Weiss Essen supporters in the East Stand as well, actually. It was a great reception for Pat, and it was a really good tactic by the club to say that the kickoff was 7 p.m. To get a good reception for Pat, because of course it didn't start till about 15 or 20 past or something. And it's quite, the Rott Weiss Essen guys had brilliant banners. I mean, they had, in one of them, the translation was really good. Like Grandpa once took you through Europe, in German, of course. It was really good. But the Rott Weiss Essen support were just absolutely fabulous, and we really have got so much to learn from them. The visitors, we have a lot to learn, basically. So at the Aston Villa game down at Villa Park and Celtic in the cup game, the one where we took 7,000 through, that's the only parallels in terms of our supporter performance, because Rott Weiss Essen supporters were fabulous, and they had a couple of really good standout players in the first half, like Obus and Safi, and they were really good. They're 6 and 7. But our first goal was a thing of beauty. It really was. Second goal, it was just very fast. The second goal, being behind Hoylett, was brilliant. And it came back off the stanchion. I don't know if others noticed that. It came back off the stanchion, so I didn't realise it had actually gone in, because it bounced out so hard. I felt McGrath and Mulligan faded after 15 minutes and Levitt took over. Miller obviously got hacked. That wasn't good. He should have been hooked immediately off the pitch, because his foot was clearly in a lot of pain. There was a couple of good bits of defence. Iredale did a brilliant interception. The keeper made a couple of mistakes in distribution, but they had really no saves to make, apart from, I suppose he could have got one of their goals. But the penalty kick, it was a brilliant save, so it was great. Jimmy McGrath was taking the corners and the fish, they were rubbish. Both cannons actually did some very poor crosses. But Rott Weiss Essen brought on their good team at half-time, and they started playing one touch, and they just blew us away for a while. And their number 19, Barry, what a speed. We had no match for him until actually McIntyre came on, and McIntyre could catch him. But that guy, Martinovic, he beat Rocky and Salinger easily. And suddenly our passes started going astray. But Boyle got his solo goal, which was fabulous. It was a brilliant individual goal. Kanaya Megwa, who I love dearly, didn't have a good start at all. Manny had an excellent tackle, but then Manny started giving the ball away, and that's something obviously Levitt didn't do. 19 by this time, their number 19, he was given a free rein, so he really was good. And Martinovic, he had a late chance. So I'm sure it was the wind that actually blew over. But Nicky Cadden proved he wasn't a defender, giving away the penalty, and it was a brilliant save. So obviously Miller ended up with a bandaged ankle. But I was, at the end of the game, I just thought, that's a third-tier German team, and I think we're going to struggle against Midtjylland.
You think, even though we've got a couple of weeks preparation still to go?
Yeah, we didn't look ready. Nothing like it. In fact, as soon as they brought in as soon as they brought on, if you like, their good team in the second half, well, that's what it looked like anyway. We just struggled. We really struggled with them, and obviously Rocky got beaten easily. Everyone played okay. I mean, they all played okay, but we were kind of lucky to get a 3-2 win. But it was really enjoyable. It was great. It was really enjoyable, and the highlight was obviously just the supporters.
Who else was there, guys? Like Stephen, what were your thoughts on it, Stephen?
Thanks, Mike. I'll just start off by saying a very happy 70th birthday to my old man. He's 70 today, so he's 1955 as well, Dougie. So, yeah,
happy birthday.
He's been all started for me from a Hibs perspective, and I've never forgiven him since, Matty. So it was like Ian. It was a fantastic game. Helped with the weather and the atmosphere in the stadium was great. And I bought my ticket. I think it was Monday night, and the ticket sales were looking really, really disappointing. So I was delighted to see it with both stands pretty much full. It was funny. Again, I would agree with Ian that the first half, it was like a German cornflakes competition winners 11. Their first 11 in the first half were diabolical. They had a 6 foot plus centre back that looked about 45. He looked so out of place. It was scary, but and it helped us play some really, really nice stuff. The first goal, especially the movement down the right hand side. And by the way, I actually thought we were more dangerous down the right than the left, which is normally the opposite when Nicky Cadden's playing. But the first move for the first goal was a brilliant goal. The second goal from Hoylett was just beautiful. I thought at the time he's actually lobbed that, but when I seen the replay, he's actually just controlled the shot perfectly, and it's a beautiful, beautiful goal. And the first half was very, very entertaining to watch. The pitch looked immaculate. I don't think I've ever seen it sort of look as good as it did last night, and it allowed both teams to try and pass the ball. When there weren't a huge amount of long balls played, especially in the first half, but it all changed at half time, Matty, as Ian said. They brought on, it looks like I think the kickoff was delayed because there was a delay in the team getting to the stadium. It looked like the actual first team 11 were delayed until about 8 o'clock, and then they came on at half time because the first 5-6 minutes of the second half, they just blew us to pieces. That number 19 down their left-hand side looked a very, very tight. I was going to say a little player, but he's probably 6 foot plus. He looked very, very good. And both goals came from our right back, their left side. My angle for the second goal, I'm not entirely sure the goalkeeper could have done much. Maybe it was a wee bit slow getting down, but it looked like quite a powerful strike. So I'm not too sure. We need to probably see the full build up to the goal again. But second half, I think you could see the players had probably done quite a lot of work in the Netherlands last week, probably at quite high temperatures, and they were maybe just fizzling out a little bit. And I would imagine facing an entirely new 11 at the start of the second half probably knocked them a wee bit as well. But once they started to ring the changes, I think we found their feet a little bit more and we started to come back into the game. Again, I'd agree with Ian. There was a couple of players came on. Megwa looked a wee bit almost rabbit in the headlights, which I'm surprised after he's had a full season at Partick. So that was a wee bit disappointing. I think the substitutions did highlight, and I don't know if David Gray done this deliberately, but we need more strikers because at one point it was Josh Campbell up front with Boyle, and then at other points it was Ellie Ewan up front as well. And Ellie Ewan as well, that's the streets we'll never forget type of performance from Ellie yesterday. What was it, 16 minutes? I think 4 misplaced passes, 1 failed run. It was just brilliant, absolutely outstanding. But yeah, just to mirror what Ian said, Matt, it was a brilliant, brilliant occasion. Really glad I went. Gutted I never managed to get my hands on one of the souvenir programme things, but just a very, very nice way to spend a Wednesday night in the sunshine. I'm
sure somebody listening will have a souvenir programme they could direct you your way, Steve. If we put your appeal out, if anybody has one going to spare, give us a shout. We'll get it to you. What did you make of the Mulligan and McGrath?
I think they both started the game really, really well. You can see that they're slightly different from each other. Mulligan looked quite happy to be in the centre circle terrier type player that was just breaking up play, starting moves with the passes, whereas McGrath was quite happy getting the ball and trying to shift it out wide and move it forward. I actually thought they looked pretty good together. How that bodes for the likes of Newell, I'm not entirely sure because they if anything, they look maybe a bit more, and I know it's hard to judge based on opposition, etc., but they kind of looked more complete in what they do, whereas Newell's just, a bit like a watered down Callum McGregor, where it's always nice passes, but there's never that maybe penetrating ball in behind. I thought McGrath looked a little bit more attack minded, and Milligan just seemed quite happy just to mop everything up. But between the two of them, I thought they looked pretty decent. They, again, similar to Ian's opinion, you could see that the legs started to go a little bit more in the second half, and that's when he freshened things up a little bit. But on the face of it, you can't really complain too much. And obviously McGrath got the goal. He probably should have scored the first chance, but he followed it up, as all good players should do if the first one doesn't go in.
Nice one. Joe, what did you make of it?
Well, I just saw little clips. I wasn't at the game myself. But from what I've read, it seemed to be a good workout and a great occasion. I mean, all the reports you read about the visiting supporters were terrific. It sounded like a big party for them. But if that's third-tier German, goodness me. But it's still very, very early doors for us. Mm-hmm. You know, by the time we play Bolton next Saturday, I would hope, you know, because we've got the trip to Bournemouth before that, I think. Yeah. They'll gradually be getting sharper. I mean, by the time we played Bolton, we've got to be on the ball because it's only a few days after that the Midtjylland game is away. So this next 10 days is really important that they sharpen up. Mm-hmm. And there was lots of chops and changes. You know, there was a lot of different players in the second half. You know, Bowie and Boyle didn't play at all in the first half, for instance. So he's going to have to find his settled first team, or most of it, in the next week or so, I would say. I think the team largely picks itself, but we definitely need another striker. That's for sure.
The atmosphere in Edinburgh was but we were up by the Usher Hall, arrived into Waverley at just a lunchtime, and there was loads of Germans about with their red strips on. And you could see they were well up for it. John, you mentioned you were at the game. You were in the east, I guess.
Yes.
You're normally in the east.
Yes.
They had the sort of the fan area before the game. You had the Germans singing "We Want Beer" at half time. Is it a good advert for being able to drink at the football last night?
Right. So again, Doug, no idea which party you were, so apologies. I was speaking to my sister-in-law who works for Pete Wishart and giving her a hard time about Scottish Government and how they should localise it. It shouldn't be this idea you can't drink at football. It should be down to local licensing boards to make decisions and for clubs to come forward with strong plans to say how they can safely sell alcohol in parts of the ground away from the pitch. They do it already in their hospitality suites, so if you've got your money, you know what I mean? And my understanding is there was 200 people in it. We missed it. My son met one of his pals who'd been in it, quite happy, £6 for a pint, 3.5% beer. He had enjoyed himself. He was away around to he was in the main stand after it. But the little feedback that I got in that encounter, it seemed to have gone well. Clearly the club can look at it. But in terms of drinking in the ground, yeah, I would absolutely say that it's something that should be allowed, it should be controlled, it should be managed by the licensing boards on a local basis.
I'm sure I saw something on social media, and at Partick we're having some fans that were able to have a drink tonight. Yeah. Doug, what do you think? Like, as part of, like, you know, even for the supporters panel and sort of pushing for these kind of things, did it make a difference to the atmosphere?
As a thing, I think. I mean, I was at a rugby match last year. Got invited to that by one of my pals, and you know, Murrayfield was just awash with different bars and various other things like that. And it just seemed a very civilized way of sort of spending, especially when the weather's like it was last night. You know, sitting there or standing there with a pint in your hand, okay, plastic glass or whatever. But yeah, I think it's an idea. It's probably its time has arrived, and I think obviously the laws and legislation were brought in at a time where there was a huge amount of violence and things like that at football matches, and it was a reaction to that situation at the time. But I don't think we've moved with the times to actually change the law. But certainly, again, I think it's something that, you know, we can be asking the club about in terms of what their view is on introducing alcohol. I'm sure from a financial point of view, this would be something that they'd want to do. And I personally, I don't have any any real issue with it. Obviously, it's needs to be brought in and under the normal licensing procedures, but apart from that, yeah.
And on the game itself, what was your take on the game last night?
Well, I like Joe, I've just seen bits and pieces on like video and things like that. I was quite interested to find out how Kieran Bowie played last night. I think he's one of the big hopes for this coming season, and Mulligan as well. Just I was a bit disappointed just in some of the views of some of the guys in terms of how he got into the game last night. He seemed to have a good spell in some of the games when they were in the Netherlands, but I think both of them are really pivotal to the kind of season we're going to have next year, and I just hope that by the time the Europa League games come along, that they're firing on all cylinders. But it'd be interesting to find out just what kind of role each of them was playing, and in the circumstances where we maybe don't get Chiantis, I can see Mulligan maybe not playing the exact position, but he gets himself around the park in the same way as Chiantis does, and as would the other guys who were at the game last night see him as a good replacement should all the Chiantis stuff fall apart at the end of the day.
John, you want to take that one? And so the Kieran Bowie and then Mulligan as a potential Chiantis replacement.
I thought Kieran was running around that a lot. It seemed to me in the first half we were trying to play the channel. So East, you see a lot of the left side of the pitch. The far side, the right, we seem to be Miller on the pitch going well. He was coming short and they were playing the ball down the line for him to run onto. So it looked as if it was all about trying to use his pace. But he ran himself into the ground. The shot in the second half that came off the inside of the post was an absolute beauty. You know what I mean? And it's just the bad luck they didn't go in, but have the bad luck in the friendly. So no, I was impressed. He was combating in the air. They didn't really seem to like it, and he was that sort of striker that we all hoped that he was going to be. Was it an outstanding? He was head and shoulders above everybody else? No. For a pre-season game, a young striker, putting the effort in, getting into the right positions, making the runs into space. Yeah, it was the stuff you wanted to see. Just didn't quite come off for him.
And how about Mulligan?
I thought his game stopped and started. I thought he started really, really well. I remember a bit in the first half when he's picked the ball up. I think it was just inside their half and started going forward. And it was that sort of McGinn type run where you've got the midfielder picks it up and drives forward 20 yards. It was like, quite impressed with that. But I think his ear must have been awfully sore after O'Hora had finished with him after their first goal, because he was missing in action when the boy goes running down the right-hand side. And he was the right midfielder. And then he moved over to the left side. And again, there seemed to be good link up with McGrath down there. So I think there was bits and pieces of he's learning who's round about him. And he's learning the position and what's going to be expected of him. He's been in the door 10 days. But no, generally...
It's reasonable way to expect that then.
No, but that's what I'm saying. But see the fact that you've got O'Hora just in that bubble, having that conversation with him, that's what we need on the pitch. The goalie not quite coming for the ball in the first half when it was coming back, it was knocked out. That had hearts written all over it again when Rocky and Smith couldn't decide what to do with the ball. These are the things that happen in these games, and you fix them in the dressing room. You have the chats and you deal with it. So, no, I was quite happy with what I saw. There was a couple of times where he's sitting in that lovely position, right side in midfield, and Nicky Cadden's in 20 yards of space, and he didn't see him. But that's for the debrief after the match. That's for the video guys to show him where the space is and what we are doing to the opposition. But no, quite happy.
Nice. We're going to jump into the comments on YouTube, and there's a few questions here. There's loads of comments, so I'll start firing questions at you guys. Me, not me, but the poster me, said, "Hi everyone, did anyone read Nectar interview this week? Think it's time we move on and either buy someone else, or do we play Mulligan there?" So I was kind of go back to what you were just asking there, Doug. Is anybody of the view that we should to draw a line under Chiantis now and move on, or do we still give him some time to make up his mind?
We could easily keep it going without committing to anything. So there's no harm, and there'll be other transfer targets that I assume we're trying to get to as well. So we just leave him if he wants to come back. As I said last week, I'd be quite happy having him back on loan, and I think he needs. I think as Joe said last week, he needs the exposure that Hibs given to get into the Australian World Cup team.
Okay, thanks. Stevie said, evening all was an enjoyable experience last night. Credit to the Rott Weiss fans, they were superb. Managed to get photos with Hoylett and Jordan Smith. So all in all, a great night. Ronnie said, Guten Abend, bangers. Green Tea said, evening all, really pleased with the size of the crowd last night. Hope Daz gets the same response. Joe, this is McGregor's testimonial on Saturday. Is Bolton coming to Easter? This Saturday, isn't it, the 19th?
Yeah. I'll be there.
We hope for hoping for another big crowd. It's a shame, obviously, Darren can't play after his accident, but he had a sort of great time at the club. Really, a sort of an understated signing when he arrived, and what a character he turned out for the club.
Well, I hope we get a big crowd so that he gets a bit of cash in his pocket, because that's really what it's all about. It's a thank you to him, but it's also, you know, with the European game coming up very, very soon after that. I think that's our last practice match, if you like, before that. I think it's the following Thursday. So not long after that. So hope Hibs get a big crowd of interest. And it's the last chance that David Gray's got to put his team together. You know, it's all very well in this pre-season farting around, changing boys about, putting a different team out in the second half. He's got to start playing the team, or most of the team, is going to be his starting 11 for the European game. So I'm hoping to see what Hibs' new team is going to look like when I go along next Saturday.
And Stephen, it's a shame that Darren can't play, because I think Javier Simons obviously turned us down to sign for Bolton. You would have been looking for McGregor to stick him in the stand at some point. So that's not going to happen. Who else could potentially do that for us next weekend?
It's really, really sad news that he was in an accident. I certainly wish him all the very best in his recovery. I think probably Mulligan. I didn't realise. I didn't make any of the Dundee games that he saw last season, so I've not seen him in person. I didn't realise he was that big a guy, to be honest. He looks like a proper unit. So I can see him going through a number of players during the season, to be honest. So probably to answer your question, Mike, probably Mulligan. I also forgot how lanky Ekpiteta was. I hadn't seen him play in the flesh for probably since the horror show.
Big guy, yeah.
He's just all legs. I don't know if it's the new kit and the shorts look really long. He looked really, really leggy. He actually looked slimmer than he did when I last remember seeing him. So I don't know, possibly Ekpiteta. Actually, maybe Mana. Mana came on and absolutely nailed somebody but won the ball. It was a throwback to the good old days where you won the ball but you took the man as well. Nowadays that normally results in a red card, doesn't it? But Mana, he looks like he likes a challenge as well, actually. So I'd probably say Mana. Yeah, stick him in that one.
Ian said, evening all. Edinburgh Hibs fan channel said, evening all. Kenny said, evening guys, I'll kick right off with, is it time to tell Yuan to do one? 17 minutes. I think I'll set up a GoFundMe page to punt him. So there's a few questions in here about Yuan. So Stevie said Yuan was his usual lazy self before another so-called injury. His heart isn't in our club anymore, and it's time he was punted. Never really been a huge fan of his. Donna said after Yuan's 15 minutes, then sudden injury, we should bin him. Ronnie said, I think I generally struggle to get my head around the grief Ellie gets. So sort of sticking up for him a wee bit. So I think early on his day, he can be one of our best players. He's like a really talented player, a match winner at times. But he's not had his day very often. Ian,
it's a long time since Ellie's had his day.
Is it a risk of a player getting better the longer he doesn't play, Joe? Like one of these ones, you know, where you long for a player to get back in the team, sort of forgetting how little impact they have when they do get back into the team and then go missing again.
The story is his head's away. I mean, apparently he cleared out his locker, months ago. And I don't know whether Hibs are playing almost as a shop window job. But, I mean, I think it's time to move on from Ellie. we need to get a couple of strikers. Bin him, get a couple of strikers in, because we're really short in that department. If Kieran Bowie gets injured, what have you got left? Martin Boyle, and he's more of a winger than an out-and-out striker, although he's been scoring a lot of goals. So, yeah, I'm sure that Hibs have done really well in the last year with putting the team together that they've got. I'm sure they're working on signings for that striker position, to somebody to play upside along beside Kieran Bowie.
Ian, where do you stand on Ellie just now?
It's not changed from last week, but I think David Gray's given him a chance. He's given him a chance in the training camp games, and he gave him a chance last night, and I think that was his chance. And obviously, he was walking around holding his back at the end, indicating that this was wrong. There's something wrong with him. John, you had your view on that last night when we were chatting?
So, first off, Ellie's got a contract for another year. The concept that we can somehow bin him is naive in the extreme. You know what I mean? If we want to pay off his contract, he will leave, but that will wipe out budget. You know what I mean? So I think fans have to realise that. Ellie's had a foot injury. Everything I've seen on Instagram, he's been getting stuff done his back. He's doing squats. He's holding his back. Say he's got sciatica or something like that. Say he has got an injury that in modern day-to-day life would cripple all of us. I mean, I had a sciatic problem years back. Could it infect your foot? I throw it as a maybe, because you know something? He may have the most stupid injury in the world, and he wouldn't be the first player at Hibs, particularly in recent years, to have picked up the most stupid injury that flares up at the most little thing when he tries. I mean, now, I can understand the performances aren't there. I can understand why he doesn't get in the team. I mean, but one, we either trust Gray or we don't. And the simple idea is that if he cleared out his locker, if his head was gone and he wasn't interested in the club, I think David Gray would have had that discussion with him already, and he wouldn't be wearing a jersey. I mean, I think we have to, so if we trust Gray, we trust him. So if Ellie's been given his chance and his opportunity, he's come on at half-time and a planned substitution, and he's gone off injured. I mean, I don't think he's pretending. His heart might not be fully there, but until we know fully, well, we should never know because it's private to him. Yeah. But there's so many things that could be going on in the background in terms of his injury, its reoccurrence. I mean, what was his name who went to St Mirren, was forever injured? We got him, not Kilmarnock, who was a forever McGuinness. Yeah. I mean, we have had players who, I mean, look really, really good and then pick up silly injuries. I mean, I think that's the one thing I would ask fans to think about, is that I don't think he's faking it. I think he's injured. Is he good enough to play at the moment? No. I mean, I agree absolutely with that. Trust David Gray to manage it in the background. Trust the club to do it. And if the best thing for both, I mean, is to pay off the contract and let him find something else, the club will do that.
You knew your hand up when you come.
Yeah, he wasn't the only guy to not play well last night. So when Josh Campbell came on, he was rubbish, unfortunately. And I love Josh, but he was rubbish last night. It was interesting, actually, because, sorry, I can't remember who mentioned it. I think it was Stevie. But actually, Mulligan was told by Levitt at one point to pass it more out wide. As you said, perhaps they'll just get used to playing with each other. But but basically, Mulligan was taking the wrong pass. He was making the wrong pass, and Levitt corrected him twice. So it was interesting seeing that, because I think Levitt was just letting them both play. After the second goal, after our second goal, when the Rott Weiss Essen 6 and 7, the Obus and Safi. When they were the danger men, if you like, David Gray told Rocky to start setting a higher line, and we cut them offside all the time after that. So he was told, Rocky, get the line higher up, and that worked really well. It was quite interesting watching Chris Cadden being moved to midfield, because I think people were chatting about that last week, but Chris Cadden being moved to midfield when Megwa came on. Chris Cadden was knackered in about 5 minutes. He was absolutely shattered just with that different thing. The terribly exciting thing was, and I couldn't hear it very well, I don't know if John heard it or Stevie heard it, but Long Bangers was mentioned at half-time. It was in the half-time announcements. Does anybody remember what that was?
Well, were we getting a shout-out for this time? Or were we in trouble? It might be because Barry had Barry had tweeted roll on tonight on Twitter and sort of challenged whether it was whether you go for a roll on or spray on deodorant. Instead, was kind of taking a slightly different meaning for what he was intending. So maybe he was getting a bit of revenge.
But the other
well, thank you for ever giving a shout out. Anyway, we appreciate it.
But the other thing about half time was the 10-second challenges. I think Sunshine has changed because Sunshine was actually trying to save the wee laddie's shots last night. And I mean,
that's the winning mentality, isn't it?
He was diving.
It's going through the club now.
It was diving. I couldn't believe it. It must be a different Sunshine.
Aye. Sounds like it.
Yeah.
And if we want to give some feedback to Barry, see if you've got a set of German fans in the away end and you've got this pre-prepared speech that you want to say to them and thank them. Get somebody afterwards to repeat it in German so maybe they understand what you've just said. No, I mean, because the whole stadium's clapping, and I'm quite sure that many in that stand's English was good enough to pick it up. But it would just have been nice, a nice wee touch, if we had just actually repeated it in German, the thank you.
It's a shame they've done so much work to improve the sound quality of the speakers around the stand, because I would have asked you what it sounded like in German, which is what you would usually hear in the tannoy. Right, we're going into Bournemouth next week to carry on the training camp. There was a bit of chat about 3 Bournemouth players potentially coming in. One of them, I think, was rumoured to be an Argentinian under-21 left back. And Joe, you'll be pleased to hear the other 2 were rumoured to be forwards. Are 2 loanee Bournemouth players what we need is the forwards, though, Joe? That's the question I have for you.
Well, it's sticking out like a sore thumb, and I'm sure everybody on Long Banner's panel will agree with me. We're woefully short on strikers. Especially when we've got Europe as well as our league games to consider. Just needs, Kieran Bowie to get injured and McDoylan. And as Ellie's, whether you love him or hate him, he's off the ball just now. So we definitely need help in the striking area. So if we can do a loan deal with a top-class young Bournemouth guy, bring it on. That's what we need.
And Stephen, as a left back, doesn't seem like a position that we would most obviously need to strengthen. But I guess like any position, if you could get a chance to improve it, you should do it.
Absolutely, and I don't know if they're maybe looking at the Scottish market as potential to get him into British football a bit quicker and maybe a bit more beneficially than putting him into the English lower leagues potentially. I mean, if he's an Argentinian under-21 international, I don't think they're going to want him to be playing anything higher, or anything lower than maybe Championship in England, and there might not be any Championship clubs that are interested, potentially. And if he comes in, Matty, as we always say, if he comes in and he improves what we already have, then it's a no-brainer, really. And as for the strikers, John always points out that you carry a match day squad of 19 or 20, and you've got 16 players that will feature. Kieran Bowie, the only thing I would say about Kieran Bowie last night is he still doesn't look like he's able to finish 90 minutes, even in a friendly. So you absolutely need, of your 16 players that are going to feature on a match day in terms of minutes on the pitch, you're going to have at least 3 of them probably in forward positions. Martin Boyle is the wrong side of 30. So to echo what Joe said for weeks now, we absolutely need forward players. And if 2 of the 3 that have been rumoured are forward players, then I don't want to say get them in just to boost the numbers, but if they're coming from a club the size of Bournemouth with the strong competitive season they had last week, with their recruitment and the way that they identify really, really good players, you'd like to think that they're going to be good enough at a lower standard than Bournemouth, i.e. us at Hibs.
Can I just pick up on something you just said there? I think it's a concern that Kieran Bowie seems to be toiling the last 90 minutes.
I don't know if it's maybe he just puts that much in the first 60, 65 minutes. And as John says, he was doing different roles. He was running down channels. He was holding up the ball. He was trying to bring players in. I can imagine that would take quite a lot out of anybody. But somebody that's maybe not had the greatest run of, injury problems, it maybe might be that. And I guess that's probably what we've said all along as well. That's what a pre-season's for, to get him to that stage. But most strikers don't last the full 90 minutes anyway. It's very rare, isn't it?
I think
I'm old enough to remember Joe Baker. He used to last the 90 minutes and ran like shit.
Kieran was one of the players that came back late because he was on international duty as well. So I think the way that Gray's been managing the minutes for all the players would maybe mean he's still on the sort of path to building up to the 90, Joe. Doug, how about you? What do you think? Is young strikers what we need, or do we need a couple of experienced bodies at the top end of the pitch?
Yeah, no, I think we need, like Joe, I think we need the firepower up front to either support Barry or to if he's going to be struggling after 60 or 70 minutes. And David Gray's done a lot of that. I mean, he's switched strikers all last season between Hoylett, Gale, and Bowie when he was fit enough to play. So there's been a constant exchange of players in that position over the last season. But I would go for somebody a bit more experience. I know that again the jury's probably out on people like Kevin Nisbet and maybe him coming back. But there seems to be very little activity around his transfer from Millwall, so I'm assuming he's still available. Aberdeen seem to have cooled their interest a wee bit, but players like that, and I think bringing in Scottish players as well. One of the things that was raised with the panel was just on how you need to adjust your squad to account for UEFA rules. Hibs need to put in a list of players for the European Games by, I think it's the 18th of July. And again, I think the rule is that it's you need 8 players that have been brought through either at Hibs or another Scottish club within our league system. So I know that Rangers last year, they couldn't play a couple of their first team players because they were caught out by that particular rule. So they're going into a game, they could only have a squad of 21 because they didn't have enough homegrown players to actually fill the slots in their UEFA sort of team sheet. So
you wonder if that's something that will put Scottish clubs at a disadvantage longer term. If you think about, maybe this isn't a conversation for just now, but I'll just while it's in my head, the landscape of the clubs and academies has changed post Brexit because English clubs they're not allowed to bring in players under the age of 18 from the EU. So there's a lot more movement from Scottish clubs to English clubs now because the English clubs will play the best Scottish talent. Now, if the best Scottish talent is no longer staying within Scotland, and we have a mandate that we have to pick players that have come through the clubs, then by definition, the standard's lower than it will be elsewhere because the best players have gone. So that makes life harder for Scottish clubs in Europe, doesn't it? But I think.
Yeah. By definition, I think that would be the case. But I think that Bournemouth, obviously, they're I've not seen a lot of activity on the players' side of things in terms of reaping the benefit of having somebody from the Bournemouth ownership group. Nothing's really coming players coming through. So it'll be interesting just to see what kind of players are on offer from that source, and whether, as Stevie says, if they're playing, maybe not quite getting into the Bournemouth setup, but are they good enough for a club like ours, and could they make a contribution over the season? I think that'd be an interesting thing to look at. But at the same time, if we get through the couple of rounds in Europe, we want to be in a position where we can make the most of the Europa League or the Conference League once we get through, if that's going to be the outcome of the next few games. And I think we need a quality striker to be able to take advantage of that.
I think definitely. John, just on your point about the message in German, Green Tea said, absolutely, I made that point to Barry, and his reply that there was a message in German on the screens.
Yeah, there was four words. I mean, he spoke for about 30 seconds. You know what I mean? I know that the Germans can sort of push their words together. I mean, big things. I think it would be stretching it to say the 4 words encompassed what he was saying.
Fair enough.
What I was going to say, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, of course.
I'm not able to make...
Saint German, John.
Ich not been able to go to Darren McGregor's friendly football match next weekend, and right? I don't know. I can't. Never did it. I can't go to Darren McGregor's match. However, there is a GoFundMe up through the Hibs Historical Trust.
Yes.
Where you can donate. So I've done my donation through that, and hopefully somebody else will get a ticket through that to go. Right. It's just to sort of say to anybody out there who's thinking I'm away on holiday or I can't do. I mean, that's open and available. I mean, if somebody wants to do it. I don't have the link or anything, you have to find it.
I think we've shared the link on our Twitter over the last week as well. Definitely have on Facebook as well. But it's a great thing. It's another thing I think that Hibs are getting right at the moment. And I know there's sort of committees involved in these things rather than necessarily the club, but there'll be some participation in that as well. So, yeah, absolutely the opportunity to fund tickets for somebody else and still contribute if you can't make it.
Ask Ian something very quickly.
On you go, Joe.
Ian, you were at the game last night. Apparently, a couple of the young laddies came on. What did you think?
I mean, I was really worried at first about McIntyre when he came on, but he was really good. It was good. He was really excellent when he came on, and at one point, as I said, he went after their number 19. And he was one tackle he put on him was tremendous. So he didn't back away at all. He won the ball in midfield and he passed it out wide. So I was really impressed. He got the most minutes, if you like.
Excellent. Okay, we will wrap up. One thing to mention is we changed our logo this week. A company called Panoramic Media got in touch and asked if we would fancy getting a refresh of our branding. So we took them up on their kind offer. They did it for nothing for us. So you'll have noticed some changes to our logos, etc. And that sort of prompted us on the back. A few people asked about T-shirts or caps and things like that. So we had a Redbubble store. Right? There's a website called Redbubble, and we have some merchandise, I suppose, on there. So if you're interested in picking up a Longbangers t-shirt or cap, there's some fresh designs going up on there. We've got a new logo on it. We've got a sort of Oasis-esque Bangers t-shirt that will be going up as well. So if you're going to Murrayfield at the start of August and you want to rep the podcast there, then you can do it and not look out of place. So I'll post the link up on our Twitter. Keep an eye out for that stuff. And as always, we have our subscription offering on Patreon or on YouTube, where you can sign up to get extra content as well. But we'll leave it there for tonight. Thanks very much to all of you for coming on. Doug, it's great to meet you and hear about the panel as well. So thank you especially for your time. And thank you to everybody who tuned in on YouTube and left comments. We'll be back on Sunday, and we'll see you.